So, who is John Bolton and what does his appointment mean for America and the wider world? To discuss this, we're joined from Washington by Adam Mount, who's the director of the Defence Posture Project at the Federation of American Scientists. Adam, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Just tell us, how is John Bolton viewed by the defence community?
Well, there's a great deal of concern here in Washington, and I think around the world. Much of it's justified. On issues like Iran and North Korea, I think it's difficult to overstate just how extreme Bolton's views are. He has a long history of politicizing intelligence, that is, cherry-picking intelligence for his own benefit and to fit his views and his ideas. And he's got a long history of being abusive to staffers, not sort of outright abuse, but being a poor manager of their activities. So for a position that is meant to impose rationality and clarity on a complex national security bureaucracy, I think he's widely seen as a pretty poor choice.
Those comments that you've made obviously cause me anxiety that you're making these claims, very strong claims against this man. Can you offer us some evidence to support some of those things, rather than it just being your opinion?
Sure, you can look at Bolton's own words. So, for example, with respect to North Korea, Bolton's been very clear that he favors a military option. For example, Bolton thinks that talks are very likely to fail. You can't negotiate with North Korea. They're likely to stall for time. He's peddled this strange fantasy that, for example, China might be convinced to reunify Korea under South Korea's rule and then hand over the keys to us and our allies. I think that's divorced from political reality with China. And he's upfront that he prefers a military option in North Korea. He's laid out a couple of different possibilities. He's said, for example, that there could be a strike against North Korea's nuclear and missile complexes and their development facilities, or that we could contemplate, for example, invasion. That's very far outside the mainstream of his views, or of the views in Washington and around the world. And Bolton has been upfront about what he says about this.
How well placed, then, are the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Intelligence Committee to put in checks and balances in place to stop any of those more extreme reactions?
Well, no one person makes policy in the United States government. The Joint Chiefs, for example, and the intelligence community can be very clear that a military strike would stand a very poor chance of holding back North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, that we don't have the intelligence to support that we would stand very little chance of limiting North Korea's counterstroke, its attack against Seoul or our allies. These kinds of arguments could go a long way to convincing the president to stay his hand or to prevent John Bolton from seeing these theories through. That having been said, the president has systematically been replacing advisors that value a formal and rational policy process with those that are personally beholden to him. So, for example, installing Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State, Pompeo lacks the sort of diplomatic experience to manage that large bureaucracy, but he's personally very close to the president. So there are many good reasons. You know, war is not a foregone possibility, but I think the risk has increased beyond what most people are comfortable with.
Yeah, and because although there was the prospect of talks with North Korea that came to light during the Winter Olympics, we haven't actually got there yet, because it does take a very long time. So how much of a meeting of minds, then, do you think it is, John Bolton's appointment by President Trump in an administration that wants to say the United States is going to be robust against growing international threats?
Well, I think that was clearly the intention. Bolton has been an outspoken hawk on broadcast media, and I think that this is what attracted the president to his views. He seems to have been selected for these extreme views. I don't think we should sugarcoat them. He himself is upfront about them, and I think we need to face clearly that he is, one of the most forward-leaning members of the U.S. policy community on issues like North Korea and Iran, and the value of military options for handling those situations. That's simply what his position is. So I think that attracted him to the president, but that doesn't mean necessarily that we will head down that road. There's a great deal of other veto players within the U.S. policy community, in the State Department, in the intelligence community, and in the military that will weigh in and hope to impose rationality on this process.
Adam Mount from the Federation of American Scientists, thank you very much.